Cancer is like getting poured on and completely soaked right when you're about to get home. Okay, that's not actually what cancer is like. It's just what happened to me on the way back from the hospital. What cancer is more like, the better analogy, is cancer is like running a marathon. You start off, you actually feel pretty good. You have a lot of energy, you know kind of what to expect. There's a plan for the future. If you did your homework, you know what the course looks like, so you can kind of expect some of the twists and turns and, elevations, hills going up, hills going down, and stuff like that. And you can kind of mentally prepare for that. So in the beginning, things aren't really that bad. But there's always things, unexpected things that happen. Oh, at some point, turn a corner and there's this hill that you saw on the plan turns out to be way steeper than you expected. Or a tree fell through the road and you have to go around it through the forest. Or it rained really heavily the day before and part of the trail got washed away. There's always unexpected things that happen in marathons. Unless, of course, it's a city marathon, but even then, there's always going to be unexpected things. Things like you start sweating and then the sweat gets in your eyes and your eyes start to water and you end up crying while running. Or you get a cramp and you have to push through the pain. Or, your feet start to sweat and then your socks start to rub against your feet and you start getting blisters and there's pain from that. Or you get to a certain point where your body just kind of runs out of energy and then you gotta push through that until you kind of push through that wall and get back to the point where you do feel like you have enough energy to keep going. And, sometimes it's so intense you gotta take a break and just walk for a bit. Sometimes you gotta find a bathroom to, relieve yourself. Whatever it is, there's always going to be unexpected things in a marathon. But the beauty of a marathon is there's always solutions to almost every problem. And even though, yes, there are solutions to a lot of problems when it comes to cancer, there is one major difference between running a marathon and having cancer, especially when it's stage 4 cancer, especially when it's a very rare form of cancer and there isn't necessarily a cure. But whether there is or not, that's not the point. A lot of these examples that I was giving for the marathon, there's a version of that for cancer. So as an example, in my situation, start off, get diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, there is no cure, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, all right, there's still a plan. Immunotherapy, we're going to go on that. It should, reduce the tumors. It should begin the process to buy you more time. And maybe eventually we will find a cure. And also my strategies, I'm going to try alternative cures. I'm going to try different strategies and things like that. So begin kind of like the marathon. We have a plan. Not the perfect plan, but we have a plan. And then there's always unexpected things like, oh, I lost my appetite and as a result of that, lost a bunch of weight. I'm coughing more and as a result of that, sometimes I throw up. Sometimes I throw up when brushing my teeth. Oh, I coughed up blood. Oh, for some reasons I'm starting to get migraines. I don't know why. And as a result of that, I'm throwing up. And eventually, when my nurse tells me, like, all right, this is intense enough, go to the emergency room, they discover tumors in my brain. So get radiotherapy to treat that. And then they do a bunch more scans and everything. It's like, oh yeah, it turns out the mass in your leg that you thought was a tensed muscle, turns out that's a giant ass tumor and it's cancerous, and that's the initial source of the cancer. And from there, it spread to the lungs and then the brain. And then, as a result of the radiotherapy and the swelling in the brain, pass out in the subway, wake up in the hospital once again, have to take a bunch of drugs for that. And a side effect of that is, oh, cool. Now you have a shit ton of hunger, so you're eating all the time, which is good. But then as you decrease the dose, you get to the point where, oh, my hunger is completely gone again. And then you lose 9 pounds in 2.5 months. So that would be kind of the cancer equivalent, or at least in my case, the cancer equivalent of all of those obstacles that you would face in a marathon. So very, very similar. That's why I use that example. The only major difference is a marathon, there is a clear finish line. And it's not really that big a deal if you decide to give up midway through. Whereas cancer, well, first of all, there is no finish line. You have no idea if this is a 5 kilometer run, a half marathon, a full marathon, a 50 kilometer ultra marathon, a 100 kilometer ultra marathon, 200, 500, 1,000. You have no idea. And the other downside is you can't give up because giving up means dying. So it's basically like running a marathon that you're not prepared for. You have no idea what to expect. You know that the things that will pop up that are unexpected will most likely suck and put your life in danger. And on top of that, you have no idea where the finish line is. So basically, the hell version of running a marathon would be cancer. So not exactly something I would recommend, but then again, it's not exactly the type of thing that anyone would choose. Yes, I believe I manifested this. I believe on some level I did choose it, but not consciously. I never would have consciously chosen stage 4 cancer, especially not of a super rare type of cancer. But I do believe that I did manifest this in my life so I could go through the experience and it will allow me to change and evolve and grow as a person and become the person I was destined to become. And that will allow me to accomplish the things that I feel like I'm destined to accomplish. So I don't have any regrets, but it's definitely not something I would have chosen, just like running a marathon where you don't know what the finish line is and you don't know what the obstacles you'll have to overcome are, and failing literally means death, is also not something that people would choose. So this is really the perfect example I could think of. And I don't know if this brings value to you if you have cancer or some sort of other intense illness or whatever. I just thought it was a very good analogy and it just felt appropriate to share. It's just ironic that on the way home from the hospital and knowing that I'm going to be filming this video, it just downpours and I'm soaked. And I'm like, that's also a pretty good analogy. You're like, ooh, it's almost over. I can finally relax. Nope, it's raining now. You're soaked. It sucks. That's pretty much what cancer is. Just when you're like, ooh, things are actually going well, it's like, bam, something really bad happens. And you're like, well, I guess I was wrong. That being said, I still remain optimistic, even if not everyone agrees with me, but that's okay. That's the whole point of this, just sharing my experience, sharing my story, my beliefs, the ups, the downs. Unfortunately, in the last 6 months, there's been a lot of downs, but also a lot of ups, at least from my perspective. Just this shift in perspective of how I see and interact with the world, that's been a huge thing. Even though in the last month and a half, it's sort of gone away just because of everything I've been going through. It's very intense and it's difficult to remain in that state of gratefulness and connection to the universe when you're literally struggling to breathe. When you're coughing so intensely that you run out of breath from just coughing. When, like, I've discovered as a result of that, which in a way is a good thing, I've discovered how truly important breath is, or at least for me, to feel connected to the universe, to feel grateful, to feel happy, to be in that state of just constant trust and faith in the universe and the future and that everything will be okay. So it still mostly remains. It's just not as intense as it used to be. And sometimes it's kind of hard to remain in that state as a result of what I've been going through recently. But yeah, it can always be worse. Just like when you think, oh, I'm almost home, and then it starts pouring on you, You never know what to expect. All you can do is make the most of it. So hopefully whatever you're going through, even if it sucks, Well, maybe you'll be able to make the most of it. At least I really wish you can, because life in general is more enjoyable when you try to make the most of things and try to approach situations from a positive mindset, even if sometimes, yeah, okay, maybe you're choosing to believe something that isn't true for most people. As long as you believe it, that's all that really matters. So, yeah, that was my story for the day. Cancer is like a marathon, or if you prefer, it's like getting caught in the rain when you're about to get home.